So I'm about to present one of the craziest theories out there, that is regarding Marrok. The real identity of Marrok might not be Ezra because it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's probably not Starkiller because, well, Sam Witwer already talked about it. Yeah, it might be the clone of Luke Skywalker. Now, before you click off and say that's crazy, I'm gonna try and convince you the most I can, because there are signs in canon. In actuality, in canon, there is definitely a misdirection happening here with Marrok. There's a reason why he is masked fully. He hasn't talked even. Something is going to happen by the end. He is going to be revealed to be somebody really, really important. Now, before I start convincing you with canon facts, let me first debunk a couple of other theories. So, first of all, it's probably not Ezra, because Ezra, we saw him relocate now that we see into another galaxy entirely with Thrawn together with him. So, it most probably or definitely is not Ezra. Either case, I don't think it would make for a great story. I think they will build up to his comeback. Now we move on to Starkiller, of course, the fan favorite. We all want to see Starkiller, or at the very least Sam Witwer, be back for another role. However, again, Sam Witwer did talk about this in his stream, that they had discussions with Dave Filoni, to be fair, but those talks never went anywhere. So Dave Filoni, similar to how he did in Star Wars Rebels, he decided to go against it, because I understand bringing back Starkiller could prove to be a whole lot, and the focus should be on Ahsoka more so. And the third possibility, Barriss Offee. Now, we would love to see Barriss Offee. Me personally, I have made many videos about what really happened to Barriss Offee, because we have no idea. After she was imprisoned during the Clone Wars, she never really got any more attention. We don't know whether she became an Inquisitor or whether she just is roaming around the galaxy, kind of like Balon maybe. We don't know anything, but what we do know during this series is that this Inquisitor is definitely a male. He did not seem, look like, or move like a female Inquisitor, and we have seen female Inquisitors in the past. So again, there is definitely a reason why this Inquisitor, Marrok, not only do we not see his face, but in both episodes we do not hear a single peep out of him. Now here comes the interesting part, the part where it's kind of convincing when we talk about a clone of Luke Skywalker. Here we go. So first of all, did you notice during the duel that this Inquisitor was suspiciously holding his ground against Ahsoka? He wasn't about to defeat Ahsoka. However, knowing what we know about Ahsoka, how she dispatched Inquisitors in the past with ease, this Inquisitor really held up his own. And we're talking a mature Ahsoka, an Ahsoka that seems very proficient at this point in her life. But there's another reason too. The thing is that we have speculated for months, ever since the trailers started coming about, that will we see Luke Skywalker in this series? There's never been a hint of it. We know that Luke right now is rebuilding his Jedi Order. We actually saw it during the Book of Boba Fett. We know that Ahsoka even met up with Luke Skywalker, and that she actually helped him in rebuilding. Grogu at the time was with Luke training. But it's kind of suspicious and weird that we don't hear Ahsoka talk about Luke at all, not even a hint of him. We clearly don't see him in any posters, media, or speculation, so things have completely quieted down when it comes to Luke, and when things are too quiet, that's when you need to pay the most attention. You see, Luke Skywalker might not appear in the Ahsoka series, but Luke Skywalker with two U's, who was a clone of Luke back in Legends, just might. Don't believe me? Here's proof. So, in canon, not in Legends, we're going to talk later about LUUKE later on, and Joruus C'baoth and his connection to Balon's skull. It's everything is connected, everything is gonna make sense in the end, I promise. But let's talk about canon. I know this is hard to believe, but the first thing we need to discuss is the severed hand of Luke Skywalker. Now, we have a clear idea of how LUUKE was created by Joruus C'baoth. Back in the day, he used the DNA out of Luke's hand that he lost during the duel against Vader on Bespin. And guess what? 2 years ago, in Darth Vader issue number 11, we saw Darth Vader go to Exegol, meet up with Palpatine, and in the end, not only Vader witnessed the creation of Snoke, but he also saw his son's hand in a jar. It is in fact confirmed in canon that Palpatine had Luke's hand in a jar on Exegol. This was used for clone creation. In fact, it helped with the Snoke clones, but of course you might suspect something more, and you're entitled to, because we know Palpatine was playing around with cloning technology at the time. Not only did it create Snoke, but we see that Palpatine comes back later on. So we know that a a clone of Luke by now is not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, for crying out loud, Sidious had an entire hand of Luke. In episode 2, we saw that there are still Imperial loyalists. In The Mandalorian, we see Gideon has already experimented with Force-sensitive clones of his own. He has created them. They are kind of alive, but still not functioning properly. All this connects to say that Gideon and the Imperial remnant that still remains had their hands on Luke's DNA. You see what I mean? So why is it unbelievable to think that Luke has a clone out there somewhere? Maybe Marrok. Still don't believe me? Let's continue. In Star Wars issue number 20, came out last year, Luke journeys to the mid-rim planet of Gazian. The living sea of Gazian absorbs Luke while he is on the surface and creates a double of Luke. As you can see, I made videos on both of these and they're pretty popular, and by now this should set slowly in your mind. In the Darth Vader issue, we see Luke's hand, and it is speculated that Palpatine might have made a clone out of it. But in this other issue, in the Star Wars issue number 20, this is actually confirmed, guys. Luke has a double. Maybe not a clone, but a double of himself. And after Luke is released and he leaves, he still leaves this double inside the living sea of Gazian. So a double of Luke is confirmed in canon. Now that we talked extensively about the canon lore, now let's talk about the Legends lore and how it connects, because double Luke was actually created by a clone of Joruus C'baoth. Now, Joruus C'baoth was a Jedi Master that was defeated by none other than Thrawn. In this legend story of W. Luke, you can clearly see the Thrawn connection here. When Balon's skull first appeared and we had no idea who he really was, every other fan was speculating that finally Joruus C'baoth is being made canon. Obviously because of his connection to Thrawn. Because you see, Thrawn, while killing the original Joruus C'baoth, W. Joruus C'baoth and another clone of the Jedi Master, and he worked diligently with Thrawn, side by side. What was Joruus C'baoth at that time when he worked with Thrawn? That's right, he was a dark Jedi, and both of them were intent in destroying the New Republic. It was Joruus's clone that actually created W. Luke Skywalker, and as we see by the famed picture on Mount Tantus, the original Luke Skywalker together with Mara Jade face off against Joruus C'baoth, and Luke finally faces off against his clone, Luke Skywalker. There's a couple of interesting tidbits here, because the lightsaber that Luke's clone wielded was actually Luke's first lightsaber, Anakin's lightsaber, that he lost on Cloud City. Luke, of course, was fighting with his green saber. Ultimately, in Legends, the clone is killed by Mara Jade. And what's another interesting tidbit, this just off the charts. Most people know about W. Luke, so 2 U's Luke Skywalker, but there's a 3 U's Luke Skywalker. There's a clone of the clone. So immediately after Luke's death, Grand Admiral Thrawn actually had a backup of a backup. He actually used another Luke Skywalker clone that went to live on way past Luke's death during 4344 BBY. This is when Luke's double clone met up with another clone who had invented a time machine. This is how crazy Legends is. They went back to the Clone Wars period and fought against Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan. So Luke's clone fought against Anakin. This is just crazy things happening in Legend material, but I digress. Let's rein it back in and actually discuss, is it possible? I think, in my opinion, this is a great diversion what they're doing with Marrok, because by this point we should have known who this guy is, or at the very least we should have heard his voice. So they want us to think it's Ezra. The speculation out there is that this is Ezra and he has turned to the dark side and now he has joined Balon and Shin Hati. But this would be a perfect diversion. Imagine that mask lifting and showing the face of Luke Skywalker. Imagine the bafflement of Ahsoka Tano. A clone of Luke Skywalker would not be the craziest thing in canon. As I said earlier, there is already confirmed canon instances where we see that Luke not only has his DNA out there for Palpatine and now Thrawn to use, but also that he already has a double. And it's just perfect because in Legends, Joruus C'baoth controlled Luke Skywalker, and now in canon, Balon controls Marrok, so it goes hand in hand. I know it's crazy, but tell me all of your thoughts down below in the comments.